Cool. So you've been involved in the X-verse since The Last Stand. So I thought I might start with that.
Okay.
Around that time, that's 2006.
Yeah.
The Tim Story Fantastic Four movies were around then. And of course, now everything's about expanded universes. Was there ever a conversation back then about crossing over those two universes?
There wasn't a conversation back then about it. I think that Marvel was, as a studio, was just starting out, and this notion of crossing over and telling larger stories that are like a sort of a larger tapestry taking place over different movies hadn't really come into its fruition yet. And so none of us were thinking in those terms. And Marvel blazed the way for us. We should have been thinking in those terms because that's obviously the way that the comics have always done it, but we weren't. So we didn't think in those terms.
Why do you think that is?
I just think it's a radical way to make movies. And I think that usually movie studios aren't, let's just say, they're a little short-sighted. They're not long-term thinkers. They just sort of want to bang out one movie at a time. And then Marvel showed up and changed the way that we all look at movies. Instead of just looking at sequels of individual films, they looked at sort of horizontally how movies could all intersect and inform each other. And I think that that's part of that is the genius of Kevin Feige looking at comics and taking, the lead from there. I think some of it is also the way the world works now. We live in a more horizontal world. If you're on the internet, you're not really delving deep into things. You are more sort of tapping and touching and going from one thing to the next, and that are all interconnected into one large story. So I just think that the world changed a little bit. I think also the viability of superhero movies changed. They weren't fringe movies, but they went from being a genre to being the dominant tentpole genre now that we have. So just all of those things conspired to us looking now at opportunities to tell larger stories.
The interesting thing about Apocalypse is that the big villain of Apocalypse strives for omnipotence. And I wondered how you see yourself in Apocalypse as the character, as the architect of the X-verse.
Nobody's asked me that before. Listen, when you actually have to write, and you're, I'm sure, a writer, you never see yourself as omnipotent. You only see yourself actually as flawed and scared and terrified that the words aren't going to come and that the page is going to be blank at the end of the day. So I don't imagine myself as omnipotent. I do certainly enjoy being able to occupy this role of architecting the larger stories of the X-verse, and that includes Deadpool. It will include Gambit, New Mutants, hopefully Fantastic Four as well. And it's fun for me because it's the way I grew up reading these comics. So as much as it is a radical new way of writing story for film, I grew up this way and I love it. And it's also something that I watched. I'm a big Star Wars fan and I'm a big Expanded Universe fan in Star Wars too, as well. And the way that they operate and those different stories intersect, even though they're not always cinematic, was interesting to me. So I don't know. I don't think of myself as anything other than a very lucky, nerdy writer who gets to play around in a sandbox that was my dream growing up.
You brought up a whole load of projects there you're involved in. First of all, Gambit, so that you brought it up. What's happening there? Because it was down for an October release, wasn't it?
It was. We got to get the script right. We just didn't get the script to the place that we all felt like that movie deserved. So we're still working on the script. We're very close, actually, to being done with the script. And the hope is that Channing has a couple movies he has to shoot, but that we would shoot at the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
Have you got any ideas how's the script looking at the moment?
It's really good. Not going to tell you anything about it content-wise, but it's, I think one of the things that I've learned on all of these movies, and it really, maybe the lesson was the best learned for me on Deadpool, is the most important thing is getting the tone and the voice right. That the storytelling, the actual narrative, the plots are sort of interchangeable and disposable, ultimately. I mean, if I ask you what your favorite movies are, you're not going to tell me the plot. You're going to tell me you love this character, And so what we've really tried to do on Gambit is make sure that we get the voice of that character right and the tone of the comics 100% on the page. It's a very unique tone. It's unique from Deadpool. It's unique from the X-Men. It's a heist movie that we've never done in these kinds of films before. He's a con man, and so that's really where we spent our time. Is there was a moment when we were going to shoot the movie at the beginning of this year, and then we felt like it just wasn't ready. So hoping that Gambit is like Deadpool was the start of a new franchise within the X-Men universe, we want to make sure that we get it right.
You also mentioned Fantastic Four, and I was wondering, because it's about a year on from last year. What are your thoughts on that? Because you said you still want to make it work.
Yeah, I mean, the Fantastic Four comic is as enduring and I think powerful as the X-Men comic. And certainly it's an older generation comic, but it's been really important, and it's one that I loved growing up, and I continue to love. The characters are great characters, and I think that the actors we have in that franchise are amazing actors. I mean, you look at Michael B. Jordan; he's like the most in-demand actor right now, and Miles Teller and Jamie and Kate are great actors. So I think there's an opportunity to tell it and to tell it correctly. We didn't on the last film. I mean, the reality is, you make movies, not everyone's going to be great. And you put as much effort into the ones that are bad as you do the ones that are good. And that one, for lots of different reasons, lots and lots of different reasons, just wasn't the right iteration of a Fantastic Four story. And I think part of it was, I actually think part of the problem on the last Fantastic Four is that we tried to make it maybe a little bit more like an X-Men movie, make it a little bit darker, when in fact I think the Fantastic Four comic traditionally is a lighter, brighter, more hopeful book that's interested in very different things than other comics. So the challenge this time is to get it right tonally, and to find sort of what is special about the Fantastic Four as a story.
One thing that's special about the Fantastic Four for me is interdimensional travel.
Yeah.
And as soon as you open that up, you can conceivably retcon into X-Men.
Yes, sir.
And even maybe the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Well, that gets
arose.
complicated for reasons that are way above my pay grade in terms of how you integrate the Fox Marvel properties into the Marvel Studios properties. I would love to see it. Obviously, it's working now with Spider-Man, and Kevin Feige is somebody who I absolutely adore and really respect and kind of worship. So it'd be amazing if we could figure it out. But I'm more focused on if there's a way to have the Fantastic Four and the X-Men one day in an ideal world meet up. But you're right. And even in the Fantastic Four movie that we made last summer, interdimensional travel is an integral part of the storytelling. So it opens up the possibility, and it's a necessary. It's necessary because of the fact that they exist in different dimensions. In the Fantastic Four world, there are no mutants, and in the X-Men, there is no mention of a famous superhero team called the Fantastic Four. So they would have to travel to different dimensions to interact, and it's certainly something among many things that we are talking about.
I'm conscious that I haven't actually spoken much about Apocalypse now, which is the reason we're here. So I'll ask you about that.
Sure.
It's a tremendously metaphysical film for me, because Apocalypse's nature is that he's destroying everything so he can create.
Yeah.
And I got that sense very much with the new class that are coming through at near the end of the movie, without giving away too many spoilers. So how did you see that working, and where do you see X-Men going from here in a post-apocalyptic?
Yeah, well, the thing you say is true. It is a metaphysical movie, and he imagines himself as God, as a sort of Old Testament God. And if you think about the Old Testament God, he would wipe things off the face of the earth. I mean, the story of Noah is a story of wiping away, what wasn't working and starting over. And that is the apocalypse that we created. And actually, Oscar Isaac and I spent a lot of time together talking about the Bible. He grew up someone who was very religious. His parents were very religious, and he read a lot of X-Men comics. So he's the sort of interesting collision or confluence of the two things that were the most influential in constructing this character. Going forward with the X-Men, we looked at this movie as the culmination of a trilogy, starting with First Class and A Days of Future Past, and now this, for the four main characters of Eric, Charles, Raven, and Hank, and the beginning, the origin of especially Jean, Scott, and Storm, who are these, as you know, huge characters from the comics, as prominent as any characters in the comics. The hope for me is that we get to keep making movies with Michael Fassbender, Jen Lawrence, James, and Nick, because I just adore them as human beings, and they're among the greatest actors living today. But I think going forward, they will share these movies with this new cast of characters.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thank you. This was fun. Yeah, I appreciate it.